They laughed first, not out of joy, but out of arrogance. That collective laugh people use when they think they've already written your ending, when they believe their numbers give them truth, when the room echoes with smugness and your silence gets labeled as stupidity. They mistook your stillness for stupidity. They confused your patience with irrelevance. You were the quiet one, the strange one, the underestimated, overlooked, written off anomaly sitting in the shadows. And they fed off each other's ignorance, each adding another layer to the mockery, building confidence from consensus. But you sat there, still, unbothered, plotting in dimensions they didn't even believe existed. And then you moved. Once, precisely, and in that single moment you made 1,000 people feel stupid at once. It wasn't revenge. You weren't trying to shame them. You didn't seek applause. You weren't chasing any form of validation. What you did was something more profound than retaliation. You exposed the lie of consensus. You ruptured the illusion that the majority is always right. Because when truth is weaponized with precision, it doesn't need an army. It needs a scalpel. And you carved through every layer of pretense, performance, and projection with one action, one sentence, one result so undeniable that it collapsed the entire structure they built on groupthink. You made fools of those who called themselves wise. And you did it without a sound. What terrifies them most is that you didn't gloat. You didn't hold up your victory and wave it in their faces. You didn't scream, "I told you so." You just existed in the aftermath of their humiliation, calm and composed. You watched them squirm in their own reflection, because the worst kind of defeat isn't loud. It's internal. You didn't destroy their credibility. They watched it unravel on its own, and now they can't even look you in the eyes. 'Cause deep down, they know they wrote your obituary while you were writing the future. Psychologically, shame triggers paralysis. When someone is proven wrong by someone they mocked, their ego doesn't just bruise, it fractures. They can't comprehend how they missed it, how they all missed it. It wasn't just one person. It was hundreds, maybe thousands, all aligned in doubt, and now they all have to carry the memory of your rise as evidence of their blindness. They once shared the same joke, but now they share the same regret. And that regret follows them into every room you now own. You're the conversation they avoid publicly but obsess over privately. You are proof that isolation isn't failure, it's preparation. You're the reminder that underdogs are only underdogs until they bite. That the ones who smile in silence often know something you don't. You were never trying to impress them. You were trying to build something they couldn't see. And now that it's real, now that your name is written in spaces they don't have access to, they call it luck, because accepting your brilliance would mean confronting their own mediocrity. They've rewritten history in their heads to make it more palatable. They tell themselves you cheated, that you got lucky, that someone helped you. But it's not the truth they're protecting themselves from. It's your discipline. The consistency they ridiculed, the loneliness they thought was weakness, the vision they called delusion. That's what really burns now. That's what keeps them up at night, knowing they laughed at a legend before it was crowned, that they had front row seats to greatness and still missed the show. You're no longer in their league. Not because you're above them, but because you outgrew the conversation. You no longer speak their language. You don't explain anymore. You don't argue. You don't invite them to understand. You let them wonder. You let them watch. And in doing so, you force them to confront the very thing they tried to erase, your existence, validated by unignorable results. That's not just genius. That's evolution. You didn't just prove them wrong, you made their mockery look small in the shadow of your magnitude. There's something cinematic about it. The moment when the entire room realizes they chose the wrong side, that they bet against someone who wasn't even playing their game, that they spent years mocking someone who was designing the battlefield, and now they sit quietly, their judgment has curdled into awe, their superiority has melted into shame. You don't even look back at them. That's the worst part, because it means you don't care. Not out of spite, but because your eyes are set on something far greater than their opinion ever was. They underestimated your intelligence because it didn't parade itself like theirs did. You didn't inflate your brilliance with noise. You didn't disguise insecurity with dominance. You moved with that eerie kind of clarity, the type that stares through noise, not at it. And when you finally moved, when you finally struck, it wasn't just tactical, it was surgical. You fried 100 egos instantly, not out of malice, not because you wanted to feel superior, but because the game they played relied on a delusion. That you were just like them, that you needed attention, that you'd buckle under pressure, that you couldn't see them, but you did. You saw through their performance, through their costumes, through their borrowed confidence, and when the time came, you dismantled them with precision. No extra words, just truth, timed to destroy. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that tastes like panic, because no one saw it coming. These were people used to barking the loudest, drowning everyone else in volume and opinion. They were comfortable because they were in control. But when you spoke, you didn't speak to impress. You spoke to collapse. And collapse they did. One by one, their personas short-circuited. They weren't ready for what clarity sounds like when it's sharpened by solitude. They expected a rebuttal. What they got was a reconstruction of reality. And the moment you finished, no one remembered what their argument was. All they remembered was you. You didn't scream. You didn't boast. You delivered the truth with such brutal elegance that it bypassed their pride and stabbed straight into the core of their insecurity, because your brilliance isn't loud. It's undeniable. And when truth becomes undeniable, ego burns under its weight. They didn't fall because you pushed. They fell because they were standing on fantasies. And you handed them a mirror. That's all it took. One moment of unfiltered honesty. One move made without fear. One strike that landed in 100 different hearts and turned inflated self-importance into ash. Psychologically, ego operates like a defense mechanism. It thrives on illusion, superiority, and assumed relevance. But when exposed to pure logic, free from emotion, free from validation, it implodes, and that's what you did. You didn't just win the debate, you recalibrated the entire frequency of the room. You disrupted their delusion with so much precision that even their allies turned quiet. They weren't just watching a rebuttal, they were witnessing a correction. You weren't out for revenge, you were out for balance. And when balance arrived, it didn't knock, it detonated. They walk differently around you now, with caution, with unfinished sentences, with uncertainty in their voice. Because once the illusion is gone, they can't go back to pretending they're above you. You made them question the foundation of their own logic. You took their borrowed intellect and made it look cheap, not through insult, through contrast. Because nothing is more violent to a fragile ego than having it sit next to something authentic. And authenticity is what you brought. Not performance, not pretense, but a truth so sharp it left burn marks on every face in the room. You didn't debate, you dissected. Every point they made, you lifted it, turned it, exposed its weakness, and left it gently on the table for everyone to see. You didn't fight them, you educated them. And education, when it arrives unexpectedly, doesn't always feel enlightening. It feels like humiliation, especially for people who built their confidence on shaky ground. You walked in with no armor, no entourage, no rehearsed lines, and yet you stood taller. Because power doesn't always come in volume. Sometimes it comes in presence, and your presence erased the illusion they called dominance. They're still reeling, trying to find a way to justify what happened, trying to rebuild the illusion. But every time they speak your name, the room remembers the silence that followed your words, the absence of rebuttal, the sound of 100 egos frying under the voltage of something they never prepared for, a mind that didn't need applause to be lethal. You didn't bring drama, you brought facts. You didn't bring fury, you brought focus. And that is far more terrifying to people who rely on manipulation to survive. Let them stew in it. Let them scramble. You didn't come to please them. You came to correct the narrative. And now, they don't even remember what the original argument was. All they remember is the lesson, the sting of underestimating someone who spent years observing while they were performing. The cost of mocking silence without realizing it was listening. They'll never recover, not because you hurt them, but because you revealed them, and some truths are irreversible. You weren't trying to win, you were trying to finish, to end the game entirely, and you did, with such elegance that they can't even explain what happened. Their minds are still looping, still malfunctioning under the weight of a new reality, where you are the one they measure against, where you are the one they fear facing again, because once someone fries 100 egos with a single move, they become the one no one wants to play against ever again. You didn't just outsmart them, you reset the standard. And the air hasn't been the same since. So keep moving forward. They're still frozen, still calculating how you made them all feel so small without even raising your voice. That's the real power. To show up with truth so sharp it slices through ego like butter. To step into the room with no noise, no warning, no theatrics, and change the entire tempo of the place. You didn't need a throne. You became the lightning strike. And now they know. Next time you speak, they better bring more than ego, because you'll burn it down again without even blinking. They don't speak about it directly. They hint, they murmur, they fumble through half sentences and sidelong glances whenever your name enters the atmosphere. Because to acknowledge what you did would mean admitting they were all wrong, that everything they thought was solid crumbled in one clean cut. You didn't just beat them. You revealed that they were never truly equipped to be in the ring with you to begin with, and that's a different kind of humiliation. One they can't meme away, can't group laugh through, can't outvote. You didn't steal the spotlight. They dropped it trying to juggle their insecurities. And you, effortlessly, picked it up without looking down. Now they try to recast the story, make themselves victims of misunderstanding, paint themselves as humble students of the lesson you brought. But the truth is branded on their memory. Every word you delivered came with no performance, no emotional outburst, just surgical precision. That's what haunts them. Because when someone ruins you with kindness, when someone dismantles your ego without ever raising their tone, it doesn't leave bruises, it leaves echo. They hear your voice in their internal dialogue now. They measure every next move against the silence you left behind, and still, they come up short. You didn't just shut down their arrogance. You reprogrammed the entire dynamic. You showed them that real power doesn't need a crowd, or a mic, or a stage. It just needs truth, spoken once with no apology. And when truth is paired with preparation, when it's backed by long nights of silence and study, when it's delivered by someone who has nothing to prove but everything to demonstrate, there is no defense, no counterattack, no comeback, only shock, only stillness, only the dawning realization that ego is flammable, and you came holding fire they didn't even see coming. So let them rebuild their illusions. Let them try to pretend the burn never happened. But deep down, they know. There's a reason the room changes when you enter now. There's a reason they lower their voices, pick their words, tread more carefully. They've learned that you don't come with noise. You come with impact. And once someone fries 100 egos at once, they don't need to speak loudly ever again. Their presence alone is the reminder. You are that reminder. And they won't forget, no matter how hard they try.